We're going to take a look at King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. Um, this is a book of Jungian psychology wherein they're trying to capture what it means to be masculine. And how they do that is by having four archetypes. Okay, so king, warrior, magician, lover. The king, a good way to imagine it is almost like a pyramid. Uh, where the king sits at the top, and the king is the organizing force, and then the other three provide a lot to the king. So before they get started on that, they talk about the boyhood forms of the three of these, and then they talk about the king. So the king is a organizational generative force that produces good things, and for each archetype, there is a shadow form, so a negative. So I think the shadow to the king is the tyrant, and the king also distinctly isn't directly embodied. It's like a king energy is the way that they capture it. But anyways, then there's the warrior. And warrior's more action oriented, willingness to commit yourself to a cause. Magician is based largely around ideas and also leading other people into masculinity, so ritual and that sort of thing. And then the lover is sensuousness and emoting and being more community oriented in the sense that you're interacting with people. So they balance each other out a lot because so the warrior, for example, is unfeeling. Um, Anyways, so the main idea is that you're dealing with archetypes, which I think in itself is pretty interesting. It's common in Jungian psychology. The book uses a lot of stories in order to paint the picture of these archetypes, and the stories are interesting, but they evidence is unclear to me, or are they substantive evidence? But it's interesting, and if you wanted to interpret masculinity in this way, you could. Uh, it's also the book was written in 1990, I think, and so maybe a bit more revolutionary back then to capture masculinity in some archetypal way, but now perhaps it's a bit outdated, though probably still useful. So let's get into the ratings themselves. For utility, I scored it a 6. I think that having an archetypal way of trying to make sense of what you're doing allows you to act with a lot more intent. And this book provides that, and so I think it's actually pretty useful, even though I disagree with the way in which the models are justified. If you can stylize your practice by appealing to certain archetypes and trying to achieve excellence through that, then so much the better. In particular, the book also offers exercises. One of them I thought was pretty interesting, and I tried it a couple times, and I thought it was good. And that is having a conversation between the ego, which is your manifested self, and your idealized archetype. So having a conversation with, let's say, the ego and the magician, in which you can do it writing, or I suppose you could do it orally, but I think they presented it in writing. You address it writing a dialogue between the two, and so your ego addresses the better version of you, and you try and work things out that way. So that as an exercise is interesting because it forces you to occupy your own position in terms of the general ego you, and then forces you to occupy your idealized position of a certain archetype, and doing that brings to the front or clarifies how your idealized archetype might view that. So I scored it a 6 for utility. For entertainment, I scored it a 6. It's pretty easy to read through in terms of the, what's going on, being entertaining enough. A lot of it's based on stories, so you don't get bogged down in a whole bunch of data, which, I mean, I like data. For interest, I scored it a 7. The way the archetypes all kind of fit together is pretty interesting. how they synergize with each other and juxtapose with each other is interesting. And the model themselves, it's actually like fairly nuanced and complex because you have like the boyhood versions of each of them, and then I think there are two shadow selves for each of the archetypes, and the shadow selves are there's a shadow self where you have too much of the thing and then too little of the thing. So here I have some notes. So for example, the shadow self for the king is if you're too kingly or you're too immersed or dependent on that force, you become the tyrant. And if you don't have enough of it, you're the weakling. Right? The shadow for the warrior is the masochist for the weak version, and then the sadist for the strong version. And then I'll just complete them, I guess. For the lover, the impotent one is the weak one, and the addicted is the strong one, the strong manifestation. And for the magician, the denying innocent one, so the one who acts like they're innocent when they're not, is the weak one, and the manipulator is the strong version. And so this means that you're thinking of things, if each archetype has two shadow selves, right, then that's 12 different archetypes. And then, or it's the four archetypes plus the four weak shadows plus four strong shadows. And then there's the boyhood versions of, I think there's two shadow selves for the boyhood versions as well. So that means you got 24 ways of thinking about something in terms of archetype, but they all flow pretty dynamically and in a sensible way from the original four. So it's interesting. So I scored it a 7. I thought it was pretty interesting. For novelty, I gave it a 4. Not because it's something you see a ton, but because I think if this type of information was absent from your life, and instead you had some sort of other archetypal model, I don't think you'd be diminished in a significant way. I don't think that the archetypes necessarily describe reality perfectly, but they provide a framework for thinking about reality, and that's useful, but you could just as easily have a different framework. For example, Myers-Briggs is another way of thinking about personality in people. I think that's also Jungian as well. And that one is based on four sets of 2 personality traits, and then you figure out which category you are. And so I like that as an archetype because it's generated by feedback from you, not some arbitrary external thing. So novelty, it doesn't score too high, but also there's some interesting stuff, so it doesn't score incredibly low either. Style, I give it a 5.5. The writing is fairly good. The authors are clearly intelligent, but it's not like riveting page turning style. For readability, I gave it a 5. I'm not sure why I scored it that low. I can't remember. It might have been just okay. I think it was just because it was like kind of like a list of stories, and the arguments were not mega cohesive. Uh, and then for difficulty, I gave it a 7. It's pretty easy to read. A lot of it appeals to saying this is the way the archetype is, and then they tell you a story, and then they're like, "There's my evidence." So it's not particularly hard to read. The language is not difficult, and the whole time, like, it's really just based off like the 4 archetypes. So when they're providing evidence, it all like ties back in together in a very nice, neat, easy to think about way. So overall, I would recommend this book specifically if you are interested in the topic of masculinity, if you're interested in the topic of archetypes, or if you're interested in Jungian psychology in general. I would not necessarily recommend this if you are looking to try and understand masculinity better in an objective way. I think this is just kind of a way to interpret it, if you like. I think that if you're looking for the cutting edge research or anything like that, you're not going to find any research in here, really. And then if you're looking for more contemporary ideas on masculinity that's informed by what's happened in the past 30 years, then obviously it was written in 1990, so There's going to be some difficulties there as well. But if you're, I rather like every once in a while balancing some contemporary reading with some older stuff because it helps you understand where how we got to here from where we were. And so historically, it's a little bit interesting as well. Overall, it's a 5.76, which is, um, it's okay. It's not. I don't think it's a stellar, hyper transformative book, but if the topics are along the lines of your interest, I think that it would be a fairly good book to read. Um, if you like this review, feel free to give it a like. If you have any comments, especially if you disagree, because I'm always happy to become better informed. And I think the Jungian psychology is something that I am both fascinated with and disagree with. So if you disagree, leave a comment, and then if you liked it, you can also subscribe. Anyways, thank you.